Pencil power. Why, hello there, adventurers. In this video, we are going to be drawing a dwarf based on Bronzebeard. I think that's his name. This was a follow-up. This video is a follow-up to an art mentoring lesson that I was doing, or that we would have been doing about the Hearthstone League of Explorers. And yeah, just this was a dwarf that I did afterwards that I think is pretty cool. Call him Brim Bronzebeard, Bronze Brother. Yeah, he's a warlock. Cool. So I'm gonna switch this up a little bit and make it from front view, while this character has a very slight turn to the head, something like that. And that's going to make things a little more complicated, but it's something to keep in mind that I'm not copying this exactly, but I'm using this as a general reference to look at the main shapes and give some tips on how you might want to draw your dwarf's face. There's also a tilt on this guy. So we're going to make this a little more straightforward to go straight up and down just to simplify the process. So you might want to start with a shape that's reminiscent of this dwarf. So one of the main things I'm seeing is that there's the hat and the head continue as one shape. So we're going to keep that for this. But today I want to actually start with just the head shape and then extend it like that to get the hat on top. From there we can see that with just a line and a shallow bowl shape, we already have the semblance of a hat. And then we might want to be like, okay, we can see a bit of the rim there too. So it's as simple as that to put the hat in. And one last line will be here, and since the hat, we're looking up at it, there's a slight curve away from us, like that. And so I'm going to represent that here and here. Show that a little bit. Like that. I like to use straight lines, often rather than a curve when I can, because it's more definitive. We can see the point here shows us the arc of this curve very clearly, while it's a little more ambiguous if you do a straight curve. All right, cool. So we've got the hat on already, and we could add a little bit of shading here if we want to give us some depth. I'll leave that for later, though. Okay, I'm going to leave it for later. I will. It's tempting to do it now. Cool. So the next thing is looking for the biggest shapes in this situation. And so the biggest one for me is the nose. And there's a pretty particular shape to the nose, which would be something like this. One of the things I like to do is start with this part of the nose, which is a diamond shape, but this one, like you can see, the bottom is much more flat than pointed. So a lot of times I would start with a diamond shape. Here, I'll just show a quick kind of nose tutorial of how I would often do noses, a diamond shape, and then bring up the two sides like that. And then here you've already got the basic outline for a nose, right? So just kind of riffing off that and looking at some variations to the shape so that we've got this kind of big bulbous end here. And so it's flat on the bottom. We know he's got a bigger nose, and we can also add this part. And so building from these bigger shapes and looking for smaller shapes inside. This could be the two nostrils. And you can see how it's starting to come together. Okay, so this is going to be, you know, the outline, but if you were to lighten that up and then go over it, just looking at the main lines that you want to emphasize and giving it a little bit extra shade, like an extra oomph there for the nostrils maybe. And doing a little bit of shading. And then you'll start to get the nose. And another tip for the nose is, I guess we will be doing some shading here at this point. So this isn't my favorite tool for shading, so I'm actually gonna blend it a little bit. So one trick is to make the entire nose a darker shade, and especially the tip of the nose. So this might be a little extreme, but I want to illustrate my point. And then, let me grab. Then just erasing out or painting in white the highlight. And you see there, you've already got a bit of like three-dimensionality to the nose from just doing that. And we might want to emphasize the nostrils a little bit, looking at a reference, what parts are emphasized. Maybe put a little bit on the nostrils. And then I can actually see the shape here of the edges, so we can keep looking at more and more details as we get more comfortable with the shape. So there you've got this big bulbous nose, and the reason it's the darker color is because it's actually a much warmer red. Around the cheeks, the ears, and the nose tip are where the blood flows to the face, and so you can see a lot more red there. This is especially prominent in dwarves. So let's give this guy a similar expression as he's got here. It's a little bit tricky with this left eye, what's going on there, but that's okay. Let's just try to look at the main shapes and put them in as like eye sockets. And it's almost like you're making sunglasses, right? But the sunglasses reveal the shape of the expression. So you can think of it like that, put those shapes in, and then within there we're going to put the circles for the eyeballs. And his eyeballs are pretty close in towards the nose. So you can see that they're kind of pretty close, pressing up towards the nose. So I'm kind of keeping that in mind. And I might even put, if we're going to have them looking straight at us here, I could even put the pupils in, or the irises in now, before I add the rest of the pieces of the eyes around it, because that'll help get that centered and lined up a little more easily than if we do that later. Cool. From here we can have the eyebrows follow the shape we've created. And if we're looking at our reference, we can add some cool details like how the eye has a little hook there. It wouldn't necessarily look the same like that from this angle, but it's like looking at a reference, it's cool to include details like that, because they're things that you wouldn't think about, and that's what references do. They give you insights and new ideas and new ways of doing things that you might not have thought about doing it that way before. Cool. And so the next thing is looking at the eyes, is that there's going to be two parts, right? The bottom lid and the top lid. So let's say you've got an eye. You've got to always remember what is going to be on the bottom lid and what's going to be on the top. So looking over here, we've got these kind of trapezoidal, upside down bowl shapes here. And on top, it's basically just well, this one you can't see anything on the left, and then the right, it's kind of just following the top contour of the eye. So from there, we can do the same thing. Like that, and like this. And then this one just follows the top contour of the eye, an extra little line. And this one you can't see what's going on. Now let's go look back over here. So I'm seeing that like both of these kind of have the eye, coming in towards this center point. So I'm just Making it a little more almond shaped like that. But yeah, I think I'm going to leave it like that. Maybe shade it in a little bit. For now, we don't really have like a strong sense of which direction the lighting's coming from. So I'm just kind of generally shading some things to help other things pop, like the eyes, you know, making it darker around the eyes so that the eyes themselves have a bit of contrast, and eyes are usually a focal point. There's also the idea that this part right here is another shape, so you could put like a little circle there, shade the underside, and get that kind of rounded form. It's a little bit extreme, but you get the idea. Cool. So the next thing we can keep move down or up. Let's move down into the beard, or to the side. Actually, let's throw in the ears really quick. These are just going to be C shapes, and ears tend to go from the bottom of the nose to the like corner of the eyes roughly. And I'm thinking the bottom of the nose is here because this part is hooked over. So just adding a couple of C shapes like that. And we can shade in the inside. And that'll be enough to give us the idea. Next, we'll want to do the mouth. So one thing you can see is how the mustache splits like this and comes up, and that's going to give us the top shape of the mouth. And then you have the mouth coming down, and it's actually, instead of just a round thing, I'm going to go with more straight edges to be a little more kind of cognizant of what I'm doing. I'm not sure if this is going to work as well from the front angle, so here I'm putting in the teeth, but let's just see. Because without the head lean and stuff, this mouth shape is a little odd, And we've got the tongue, kind of a round shape like that. Maybe a little indent in the middle. And let's shade it all in because it's all in the dark of his mouth. So maybe something like that. So I started off with the U shape, with the top like that. Or I started off with actually a kind of shape like this. Add the U shape at the bottom for the lips. I'm seeing like here, I see a little bit of those straight edges, and I'm just kind of trying to be more deliberate. And there's kind of a U shape there for the teeth, which you can add in with other little U shapes. So a lot of U shapes. And then the tongue, like that. Oops. Okay, cool. It looks a little strange. And I think that the face is kind of too long, is what happened here. The mouth should actually, everything should probably be pushed up, the mouth, the nose, and all, if I was to go like there, like that. It looks a bit better. Cool. I guess I can leave it like that. So I made the face a little too long, and these are the things that we learn as we, draw multiple dwarf faces and work on it. So we've got this kind of general shape for the mustache, and it's going to flow into the beard. So it kind of continues something like this, right? But I think you can actually, let's not get into those details yet. Think of it as big shapes. I've got to remind myself, looking for the big shapes first. So honestly, his beard is just a big circle. That's the big shape we're looking at. And then from there we can look at like, okay, cool. So there was here, he's got a little bit of something like this. And it kind of goes down, and then he's got his braid. So I might mark that like this, and then go ahead and add the braided bits. I also see that there are strands of hair sticking out, like such. And we've got these, it's very subtle here, but you can see a little bit of this kind of overlapping shape like that, I think. So see how they kind of weave into each other? Almost like scales. And then from there, you can give it a little bit of extra form in the shading part. But yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do a little more thinking about how the best way to draw and convey hair is, because I don't have like a super clear methodology yet that like just is like a step-by-step method. I'm still kind of playing around and figuring that out. So, but for now, kind of thinking about it in clumps and playing with that idea as opposed to individual strands, I think is the main idea, is to think of the hair in bigger shapes. Cool, and then so pretty much you have your dwarf. Let me just give it a little bit of shading in on the ears and on the cheeks, right? And if I blur that in a bit, you can see immediately the face comes to life a bit. And we can make the hat brim dark here. Really start to bring out the painting. And if you continue to do shading, you could continue to bring this painting to life. One last thing is this little detail right here is both this is great because it both accentuates the cheek shape, okay, and then also the sideburns for the beard coming up here are both important aspects that are created by this little triangle shape right here. Cool, and that's it. I hope that this video was helpful and has imbued you with just a little bit more pencil power. Yar.